get familiar. So if you don't know by now, then you should probably get familiar.
In this lesson, we're going to go back a little bit, but we're also going to go forward. So we're keeping that canvas and the CTX object, and connecting to CTX, you have an option for just a rectangle, and that requires the 4 parameters. So once again, the starting X position, starting Y position, the width of the item, and then also the height. So let's how about we do 200 by 100 width. And when we draw this rectangle, we don't actually see anything. So you can also go CTX Stroke, and what the stroke will do is this will actually draw the rectangle. So when we're using the CTX Stroke rectangle from the last lesson, what this was doing is this was actually a short format for the one that we just did above. So it does the same thing, but this is just a shorthand format. So you can call the stroke separately, as well as you can have it as a combined value. So if we want to draw the rectangle, we also have an option to fill the rectangle. So there is a CTX fill. And what this will do is this will fill the rectangle with whatever the default color is, or if we've set a fill color, a fill style, it will update it with the fill style. So this way you can fill it, and you can also set the colors for the strokes. So let's do one more where we're going to set the CTX fill style. And remember, this is the one that is the fill color that's being used. And then we also can set CTX, and we can specify a stroke style. And this is going to be the one that is used by the stroke value, and we see that it's creating that bluish border. You can also use single or double quotes. It doesn't matter because it's expecting that string value on the other side. So everything that we've seen has to do with the X and Y position. So you got to think of the entire element as a giant grid, and whatever you've set the grid to, so in this case we have 640 by 640, so we've got 640 across, 640 down, little squares where we can start and we can draw stuff into. And in order to draw, we also have an option to draw lines. So let's do a CTX and line 2. And this one only requires the 2 parameters. It's got an X and a Y. So it doesn't actually have the starting position, but where the line is being drawn to. So let's do a 100 by 100. And then we'll also need to fill the stroke, just as what we saw before. Setting the CTX begin path. And this is where our path is going to be starting. And the begin path itself doesn't require any parameters. I usually just like to note where my beginning path is within the parameters. So these don't actually do anything. So you can leave these out. You don't have to include the 300 and 300 as the X and Y coordinates. So I'm just using that as a reference point. So once it's created, the future drawing commands are directed into that path, and then we use them to build up from that path. And what stroke does is this applies the shape by drawing it. And stroke is the lines only, not filled. So until you initiate the stroke command, you're not actually going to draw anything, just as we saw with when we broke apart what's happening here for the rectangle. There's also a CTX move too, and this also requires just the 2 parameters, and that's an X and Y position. So think about it that when you're coming into here, your beginning path is at 300, 300, and if you want to lift up the pen and move it somewhere else without drawing, then this is how you would do that with the move 2. So let's move the pen down to 100 and 400 position. So this is our starting position, and then we're drawing a line all the way up to 100 by 100. So our starting position, and then 100 by 100. And actually, let's move this slightly back. So starting position is over here, and then we're moving it up. So it moves the pen to whatever coordinates that we're specifying. And then the line, what this does is it draws a line. Let's also do one more line. So now that we've moved it to here, we've drawn the line, let's draw one more line all the way across. And I'm going to end this one at 500. So now we've gotten to this point, and we're drawing another line from that as the starting point and moving it to here. Let's do a few more lines, and we're going to end up with a rectangle in the end. So now we're at 500, and let's move this line all the way down to 400, which was the starting point where we moved the pen to. And then one more, and this will bring us right back to the starting point. So this is going to be the same position that we had here at 50 and 400. So that created a rectangle. And if we do a CTX fill at this point, what do you think is going to happen? And if you said it's going to actually use the red color and fill the current shape that we're creating from the big bin path, you're correct. So that fills the current shape. So basically, drawing with lines, as long as you're joining them together, then it's able to do the fill of the shape. And if we didn't end up joining the lines together, well, so we did join it over at this point, but if we didn't fill the lines, what happens is that it makes up the rest of the additional line, bring it back to the starting point. So in this case, when I adjusted the line to be at 80 and 300 point, where it was ending there, it simply concluded and there was no stroke. So there's no blue line, and it simply filled up the shape by completing the shape pattern and moving it back to where the starting position. So that's the default if you don't close it off. So you're probably wondering, well, what happens if I remove this? And if you said that you're going to end up with a rectangle, you're correct, because the shortest distance from this last point to where the starting point is going to be just going a straight line across. And also notice that there's no stroke because we weren't drawing the line in this case. So if you're not closing off the shape pattern, then what it does is it tries to close the shape using the fill. And if we don't fill it, there's CTX close path, and this closes off, the closed path closes off the rest of the drawing object in the paths. So now it's up to you. Go ahead, pause the video here, create a triangle, and I'll walk you through the solution coming up. Did you have an opportunity to create a triangle? Well, let's do it. So let's create using the begin path. So where we want to start the triangle, I'm going to start it right somewhere near the center. So we've got 640 by 640, so start it at 320, and then off the top position, I'll start it at 50. I also wanted to note again that these are just reference points, so the begin path itself does not require an X and Y starting position. And then we're going to move the pen, and where we want to move the pen to. So I'm going to move the pen to 420 and also move it down by 150. And it's always nice to add in the stroke so that we can see it. And I'm also going to update the stroke style so that we can distinguish between the red, and I'll just do this one as purple. And this should actually be line 2. And I'll also add in the move to move the starting position. So there's our line that's going to begin the triangle. Maybe we want to do it a little bit bigger. So do 500 by and 250. So now we have to do a line all the way across. So the next line is already starting at where the last line left off at 520 and 250. So I'm going to subtract 400 from there so that we've got a line going across. And then now let's finish up our triangle by having a line from 120 and going back to where the starting point was of 50. And this should actually be 320 as well. So that's going to conclude our lines. And bonus points if you did a fill on your triangle. And even more bonus points if you updated the fill style as well. So CTX fill style. And let's make this purple as well. So now we've got a triangle in the middle of our design. Are you ready to move on to the next lesson? We're going to look at arcs and drawing circles.